You've been taught that the prehistoric world is gone, that the things that swam beside trilobites, that watched the first dinosaurs hatch, are only fossils now, flattened into stone, safely dead. But some of them never left. Right now, in the dark water off a quiet beach, something older than the first dinosaurs is bleeding pale blue. In the deep, an animal with 300 teeth is hunting the way it hunted before flowers existed. These aren't reconstructions. They're not bones. They're breathing. Today we're looking at 6 prehistoric animals that are somehow still alive, and they are deeply unsettling. We tend to think of extinction as a wall. Everything ancient is on the far side of it, locked in rock, and everything on our side is new. But a handful of animals never crossed over. They kept the same body, the same blueprint, the same quiet way of moving, while the entire world changed around them again and again. To sit next to one of these creatures is to sit next to something that watched 5 separate apocalypses and simply kept going. That's a stranger feeling than any fossil can give you, and it starts on a beach you've probably walked on. Every spring, on the muddy shores of Delaware Bay, the tide comes in under a full moon and the water turns solid. Thousands of dark, dome-shaped shells drag themselves up out of the surf all at once, climbing over each other to lay their eggs in the sand. To most people, it looks like an army of crabs. It isn't. The horseshoe crab is not a crab at all. It's closer to a spider or a scorpion. And its family has been doing exactly this, on nights exactly like this, for around 450 million years. That number is almost impossible to hold in your head. This animal existed before the dinosaurs. It existed before trees had really figured out how to be trees. It has survived 5 separate mass extinctions, events that erased most of the life on Earth. And each time, it just crawled back up the beach and laid its eggs again, unchanged. Look closer and it gets stranger. It has 10 eyes scattered across its body, including some on its tail. Underneath, it breathes through pages of tissue called book gills that flutter like the leaves of a wet book. And its blood is not red. It's a pale, milky blue, because it carries oxygen with copper instead of iron. That blue blood is where the horror creeps in. Not for the animal's sake, but because of what we do with it. Horseshoe crab blood contains a substance so exquisitely sensitive to bacterial contamination that modern medicine cannot function without it. Every vaccine, every injectable drug, every implant is tested with it. So each year, we catch hundreds of thousands of these ancient survivors, strap them to racks in rows, and drain about 1/3 of the blood from their bodies through a needle in the heart. Then most are driven back to the ocean and dropped in. A creature that outlasted the death of the dinosaurs now spends its evenings bleeding pale blue into steel tubs so that we can stay alive. The test works because their blood evolved a hair trigger defense. The moment it touches the toxins on the surface of certain bacteria, it clots into a gel, sealing the invader in place. We copied that reaction and turned it into the safety check that stands between you and a contaminated needle. A share of the bled crabs die anyway, and the ones that live can come back weakened and slow to breed. And they are not the only ones paying. Whole flocks of migrating shorebirds time their entire journey to land on these beaches and gorge on horseshoe crab eggs. When the crabs thin out, the birds run out of fuel in the middle of the sky. And at least the horseshoe crab lives in the shallows, where we can see it. The next survivor hides where the light gives out. Somewhere off the coast of the Philippines, a fisherman hauls a wooden trap up from 400 meters down, from water so deep it is permanently black and cold. Inside, tangled in the mesh, is a smooth spiral shell the size of a fist, striped in cream and rust, with dozens of small tentacles unfurling from the opening. This is a chambered nautilus, and its design has been drifting through the oceans for roughly 500 million years, longer than almost anything else alive. Its relatives once ruled these seas in enormous numbers, straight-shelled giants meters long. All of them vanished. This spiral is what's left, and it has barely changed. The nautilus is a living contradiction. Behind that beautiful shell sits a set of pinhole eyes with no lens at all. Just an open hole letting light into a dark chamber, like the very first camera ever built. It sees the world as a dim, unfocused smear, and finds its food mostly by smell, drifting up towards shallower water at night and sinking back into the dark before dawn by pumping gas between the sealed chambers of its shell. Those chambers are the oldest diving equipment on Earth. As the animal grows, it seals off each old room behind it and moves into a fresh one, then adjusts the balance of gas and liquid in the empty rooms to rise or sink, holding itself steady under pressure that would crush a submarine. When it needs to flee, it fires a jet of water and shoots backward into the black. Nothing about this design has needed improving in 500 million years. It has done this, quietly, through every disaster the planet has thrown at it. And here is the unsettling part. After surviving 500 million years, the nautilus may not survive us. Its shell is so beautiful that it's harvested by the ton for jewelry and ornaments, and the animal is painfully slow to replace itself, taking well over a decade just to mature. We are on track to erase a 500 million-year-old survivor for the sake of a decoration on a shelf. But the nautilus only drifts and scavenges. The next one hunts, and it hunts like a nightmare. In January 2007, in the shallow water off Owashima in Japan, staff at a marine park spotted something near the surface that should never be near the surface. It was long and brown and moving like a snake, more than 1.5 meters of it, with a mouth set right at the front of its face instead of underneath. They filmed it, one of the only times anyone has captured this animal alive. And it died soon after, probably driven up out of the deep by sickness. It was a frilled shark, and looking at it is like looking straight back into the age of the dinosaurs. Its lineage stretches back tens of millions of years, and it kept a body so primitive that early naturalists thought it might be a living sea serpent. Open its mouth and you understand the fear. Lining its jaws are around 300 teeth, arranged in 25 rows, and each tooth splits into 3 needle-sharp points curved backward toward the throat. It's a trap built on a single principle. Anything that goes in does not come back out. Down in the blackness where it lives, the frilled shark hangs motionless, then lunges forward and strikes like a snake, bending its whole body to launch at prey, swallowing squid and other sharks sometimes half its own length, whole. It has been perfecting this ambush since before flowers had fully spread across the land, and it still does it, tonight, in deep water not far off coastlines where people are sleeping. It takes its name from the 6 pairs of frilly, feathery gill slits that wrap around its throat like a ruffled collar. It lives hundreds of meters down and is so rarely encountered alive that years can pass between clear sightings, and it may hold another grim record. Some researchers believe the frilled shark carries its young for around 3.5 years before giving birth, possibly the longest pregnancy of any animal on Earth, a slow, patient reproduction that has ticked along, unbroken, since the age of the dinosaurs. It's a terrifying animal, but it's still just a shark, doing what sharks do. The next survivor did something a shark cannot do. It came back from the dead. In December of 1938, a young museum curator named Marjorie Courtenay-Latimer got a message that a local fishing boat had come in with an unusual catch near East London, South Africa. She went down to the docks out of habit, poked through the pile of ordinary fish, and then stopped. Underneath them was something heavy and pale blue, nearly 2 meters long, with thick fins that jutted out from its body on fleshy, limb-like stalks. Fins that looked less like a fish's and more like the beginnings of legs. She had no idea what it was. When the scientist J.L.B. Smith finally saw it, he could barely believe it, because he was looking at an animal that every textbook agreed had been extinct for 66 million years. It was a coelacanth. Its kind was supposed to have died out with the dinosaurs, at the very end of the Cretaceous, wiped from the Earth by the same catastrophe that killed everything else. Science knew it only as a fossil pressed into ancient stone. And yet here it was, dead on a South African dock, freshly caught. 66 million years of certainty erased in a single afternoon. Think about what that actually means. For the entire time humans have existed. For the entire time mammals have ruled the planet. Coelacanths were still down there, in deep reef caves, swimming with a slow rocking motion, moving those paired fins in the exact alternating pattern of a walking animal, giving birth to live young after pregnancies that may last years. Nobody knew. They were hiding in the one place we almost never look, and a second population wasn't found until the late 1990s, thousands of kilometers away in Indonesia. There was more hidden in that strange body. In its snout sits a jelly-filled cavity called the rostral organ, a sixth sense that lets it detect the faint electrical fields of living things in the dark, a built-in way to feel prey it cannot see. Smith was so certain more of them existed that he papered ports across the Western Indian Ocean with reward posters, and then waited 14 long years before a second coelacanth was finally landed near the Comoro Islands. 14 years. That is how well an animal the size of a grown person can hide, once the world has decided it is already dead. The coelacanth is a warning wearing scales. If we can be completely, confidently wrong about a 2-meter fish for 66 million years, the obvious question is what else we are wrong about right now. And the next animal doesn't just belong to an extinct group, it is the only member of its group left in the entire universe. On a scatter of small, wind-battered islands off New Zealand, after dark, a creature crawls out onto a cold rock that looks, at a glance, like a chunky lizard. It is not a lizard. It is not even close. It's a tuatara, and it is the sole survivor of an entire order of reptiles called the rhynchocephalians, a branch of the family tree that first appeared around 250 million years ago, flourished alongside the earliest dinosaurs, and then died out completely, everywhere on Earth, except here. Every other twig on that ancient branch is gone. The tuatara is the last one. When you look at it, you are looking at the final living representative of a design that is 250 million years old, and it carries a secret on top of its skull. Young tuatara have a third eye, a real, structured eye called a parietal eye, with its own lens and retina, sitting in the middle of the forehead beneath a patch of scale. It doesn't form images the way its other two eyes do, but it senses light, and it's a leftover from a much older way of building a head, still wired into this animal after 250 million years. The tuatara lives at a pace that matches its age. It breathes slowly, keeps its body cold, moves at a low idle, and lives past 100 years, still fathering and laying eggs at an age when almost every other reptile is long dead. Everything about it runs on deep time. Its teeth aren't really separate teeth at all, but saw-like points fused directly to the jawbone, so it saws its food apart rather than biting it. The sex of its hatchlings is decided not by their genes, but by the temperature of the soil around the eggs, which means a warming world could quietly tip an entire generation toward one sex. And when scientists finally sequenced its genome, they found something that didn't sit neatly beside lizards or snakes or anything else alive. A genetic record confirming just how staggeringly long ago this animal branched off and set out on its own. It has outlasted the supercontinents. It watched them break apart. It has done nothing but persist, alone, the last of its kind, on a handful of rocks at the edge of the world. It's the last survivor of a lost dynasty, and at least we can still stand on those rocks and watch it breathe. The final animal on this list spent tens of thousands of years frozen solid, showing no signs of life at all. And then, in a lab, it started to move. In 2018, researchers were studying cores of Siberian permafrost, frozen ground drilled out from around 40 meters down, from soil that had not thawed since the last ice age. In that ancient mud, locked in the ice, were tiny roundworms called nematodes. The scientists warmed the material, added a little water, and watched. And something inside that prehistoric dirt uncurled and began to move, and began to eat. When they dated the layer the worms came from, the result was staggering. The surrounding material was around 46,000 years old. This animal had last been alive when mammoths still walked the tundra and Neanderthals still shared the planet with us. It went to sleep in one ice age and woke up in the middle of ours. This is possible because of a state called cryptobiosis. Certain small animals, when their world dries out or freezes, can shut their bodies completely down. No movement, no growth, no measurable metabolism at all. By every normal definition, they are not alive. They are a speck of dust with a genome. And then, given water and warmth, they simply switch back on. Tardigrades, the microscopic, 8-legged water bears you can find in the moss on your roof, do the same thing, and they've ridden it through boiling heat, absolute zero cold, crushing pressure, and even the raw vacuum of open space, coming back each time. But the Siberian worm is the one that should keep you up at night, because it didn't just twitch back to life for a moment. It revived, it fed, and it reproduced. New generations born from a creature that predates human writing, human cities, human history entirely. Life that old, that patient, waking up on a lab bench in our lifetime. The worm survives the impossible by flooding its own cells with a sugar called trehalose, which takes the place of water and locks its tissues into a kind of biological glass. A state so stable that time, for all practical purposes, simply stops. When the researchers published the finding, they noted that its distant cousins alive today use the very same trick to endure. But the discovery opened a colder question. If a complex animal can sleep, whole and intact, for 46,000 years and wake up able to breed, then the frozen ground is not a graveyard, it's a storeroom, and we have no reliable inventory of what has been filed away inside it. And that is the thought this whole list leaves you with. Not the fossils in the museum, but the ones that never became fossils. The pale blue blood on the beach, the spiral drifting in the black, the mouth full of hooked teeth in the deep, the fish that erased 66 million years, the last of a 250 million year dynasty, and the sleeper in the ice that woke up hungry. Almost every one of them was found by accident. A fishing net, a museum shelf, a core of frozen dirt. Which means we are certainly not seeing all of them. Right now, the permafrost that held that worm for 46,000 years is thawing, faster every year. And no one knows exactly what else is folded up inside it, waiting for water and warmth. Some things from the prehistoric world never died. They only went quiet. And the ground that has been keeping them still is starting to melt. If you want to keep meeting the survivors before they wake up, stay with us, because we go looking for them every week.